Hello and welcome to interest.co.nz. I'm Gareth Vaughan with another in our series of double shot interviews, and today I'm joined by Andrew Thorburn, the Chief Executive Officer of the Bank of New Zealand. Thanks for coming in, Andrew.
Thanks,
now,
Gareth.
We've brought Andrew in today to talk to us about the Christchurch earthquake and the aftermath and the way that the banks are dealing with this massive tragedy and disaster that struck on February the 22nd. Now, Andrew, you've spent quite a bit of time down in Christchurch since the earthquake hit. I guess just to start with, what's been the impact on your staff there?
Well, it's obviously been a very tragic and very difficult circumstance for, I think, the whole of the region. And the resilience and determination and courage of people is absolutely amazing. That's what struck me as I've been down talking to staff and customers, and everybody's got a story to tell. It's not a big community, and the impact has been quite significant. Our focus has been around staff, around customers, getting banking services restored, and now starting to think about the longer term and work with government and business leaders down there to work out what that might look like. But in terms of staff, that was our first area of focus, because we have almost 500 staff in Christchurch, and our focus was ascertaining they're safe, making sure that their families were safe, that they had accommodation. We had a period of time where 60 to 70 didn't have homes. And obviously the trauma, the impact of this has been quite significant. So we've offered counselling for staff and for their families. But I think in true Canterbury style, our staff, like I think many people down there, have really rallied around, helped each other, and have started to look now to help the community.
You didn't actually lose any staff, fortunately?
No, we were very, very fortunate. Some very close to our staff, the husband of one of our staff members and so on, but no, we were very fortunate that our 488 staff were safe.
And look, I mean, obviously the next thing you look at is your customers, or at the same time as your staff. And obviously a lot of your customers will be affected, both your business customers and people with mortgages and personal banking services. I mean, just how big is that impact going to be? And what does a bank do in a situation like this?
Well, I think the impact on the region will be significant, and it will take a long time to rebuild the city, including its confidence. Having said that, there are some parts of the city that are quite intact in a physical sense, and manufacturing businesses are operating normally. Agri-businesses in the region are operating normally. So it's not everything's out of action. All right, there is some key bits that are very badly damaged, but I think as I've been down there, people have been keen to stress, and I've seen that there is a broader base of business that's actually quite sound. So hopefully that can keep providing an engine of growth. I think what you need to do is provide immediate support, and then in a considered way think through the complex set of decisions that need to be made in order to build again for the long term. So I think all of us have been in that phase of just stabilising. So for us, that includes getting all banking services back up and running as quickly as possible, which we did. Obviously, we still have some stores and sites that are inside the cordoned area or damage to buildings that's very structural, so we can't go back in there. So we're housing our staff in other buildings, and they're on rostering. And the important thing on day one is we got a customer assistance package out, which we modified from the first earthquake to make it even more extensive. And then within day 2 and 3, we started to call customers to check that they were okay and that we could get them back up and running as quickly as possible. So my answer to how do you help by getting on the ground and listening, by doing immediate things, but also recognising this is quite a deep, complex issue too, that you can't have a immediate, nicely wrapped up answer to.
And look, obviously in terms of the package that you offered customers, there's some reprieve on loan repayments, that type of thing. Have you gone beyond what you would normally offer for people who suffer hardships?
Yes, we have. We put out a policy day one. We changed that policy from the first earthquake because we felt that more would be needed. So, for example, suspension of loan repayments went from 90 days to 180 days. We have allowed large businesses to borrow up to $500,000 at 4.5% to provide working capital. So that's been well received, and a range of other things that people have been able to do. The other key thing we've done is we've said to a number of our key leaders, most of whom are on the ground, very experienced, knowledgeable bankers who live in that community, we've basically empowered them to say, look, anything that needs to change, we were prepared to change. And secondly, if you make a decision that's outside that policy, that was the right decision, we'll absolutely support you. So I think empowerment for local leaders to flex that policy and really understand the spirit of the situation is important as well.
And look, you've seconded your Chief Risk Officer to oversee your response to Christchurch, which is an interesting move. I don't know that the other banks have done that.
Well, learning from the first earthquake, what we found is we mobilised very quickly. Within 24 hours, we had key people on the ground setting up a command base to assess the situation, help our staff and so on. But what you find is that people burn out. I mean, it's an exhausting situation. It's an incredible crisis. And people, even from outside the region we take in, they burn out, and you need to replace them with other capable people. And so within a few days, I realised that this is very serious, having been down there. It's going to take a while for us to work through the longer-term consequences and how we react to that. And to sustain management, energy and focus, I decided to put a dedicated team in. And by taking our Chief Risk Officer, who's a very experienced banker, to lead that, I think that's signalling that it is going to be major, and it's going to require the best of our leaders to understand this and focus on it. And he is supported by 5 or 6 other key people who have come out of their day jobs, and basically they provide the planning, the objective and on-the-ground planning support for us to know what we need to do. And we think that group will stay together for a period of a couple of months at least.
And look, in terms of business customers, obviously there must be quite a few BNZ customers, business customers affected within that CBD area in particular. How are you assessing the future of their businesses looking ahead after this disaster?
So I think the impact on some businesses will be quite deep. What we're doing is we've phoned all our customers. We've got about 3,000 major customers in the business customers. We've phoned all them. Our bankers have spoken to them. So we've got a really good dialogue going, and we sort of understand now what they need, and we're starting to mobilise to help them. The 2 key things that they need immediately are some working capital support. So we're allowing that, we're encouraging that to be extended where that's appropriate. And they need, in many cases, to get into premises, to get their IT systems up, to get payroll systems running, to start to do business again. So we're working very closely with the Canterbury Business Recovery Group, which is led by Bill Luff and Peter Townsend. And they are very senior leaders on the ground who are helping businesses that need help receive help and connecting people together. So we're actively encouraging that. But for some businesses who were perhaps struggling at the time, this is going to finish them. And I think that's the part of the cold reality, that some businesses will close and not reopen. On the other hand, there's some bigger businesses that have enough resources that have already have sort of got going again, and then there's a good chunk in the middle that need some support for a prolonged period, and that's the ones we're really interested in helping, because it's going to be tough for them, but they've got a viable business, they're well run, but they're really going to be hit in a cash flow sense for a period of time.
What sort of size are these businesses? What are we talking about? I guess a fairly large range.
Yeah, there is a large range. They'll range from perhaps 5 people to 25 people might be sort of that group that I'm referring to, from sort of $2 or $3 million turnover to maybe 10, right? But they're critical businesses for Christchurch. They're businesses that provide key services to the wider Christchurch business community. So we need them to be up and running and viable as quickly as they can be.
And I guess one of the main things is that some of them will need new premises outside of the CBD in many cases. Are you guys able to help with that?
Yes, so we are. So we're doing that by firstly connecting them with other people we know in the business community who have premises, linking them in with the Canterbury Business Recovery Group, who are actively matching businesses who have needs of staff support, payroll services, counselling for staff, through to property and IT with offers of support that's come from all over the country. So we're doing that. And in some cases, and we're a bit stretched ourselves, but we have accommodated a law firm in our own premises, right? Allowed them to set up so that they can just keep going. And in our Riccarton Partners Centre, we've extended through the existing wall, and we're putting 40 or 50 new seats in there for our staff who were at Hereford Street, who are working there, so that they can.
Hereford Street site's quite badly damaged.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, it's got a red sticker on it, which means that we can't use it, and I think it's an unknown period. But I think there are businesses that now going out to office parks and getting the markets sort of operating again. But one of the key questions, I think, for government and the business community together will be to work through what happens with that CBD, because it's quite badly damaged. It will take a long time to rebuild it. And I think there is a lot of thinking around what that might look like and what the vision for that would be. That's a work in progress that I think government and business are really actively engaged around thinking about.
Yeah, look, the next thing I wanted to ask was, do you think the government is doing enough to try and help? And does the business community and the government need to work closer together? Are there certain areas that more cooperation would be useful in?
I think there's been very strong dialogue and cooperation between government and business. I mean, I've met a number of government ministers. They're engaged, they're asking the right questions. They're also, I think, taking time to think through that a lot of this is long-term and it's complex. You can't have an easy answer to this, but I think they're very engaged. We've been asked for counsel and advice, and I think they're listening to people on the ground. These people that, for example, are running this Canterbury Business Recovery Group, I think are having a lot of the appropriate influence. So I think this is very difficult now that we get through this first crisis stage. I do think there will need to be very close working relationships between government, community, business, and that's going to be a test of how well this gets executed. But I think the signs are positive. The lines of dialogue are open, and I think the right questions are being asked.
And look, we had Westpac today say that they expected credit losses from the earthquake ranging from anywhere from $30 million all the way up to $100 million. You're obviously assessing similar implications for BNZ. What's your initial expectation of the impact on your credit position?
Well, we don't actually have a number at this point, but because what we've been doing is focused on staff, customers, stabilisation. That's been our priority, really, to help the community. And we're now starting to think through, in a multifaceted way, what we call stress testing our book. Where do we think the stresses might be? To what degree? What would be the provisioning we'd need to make? And that process has not yet been completed. And I think we want to be considered about that and accurate. But I think whatever happens, I think the bank is strong, and I think that it will be a manageable outcome for the bank.
And in terms of the provisioning, do you think at this point it will be more weighted towards the business customers or the individual customer side?
I don't know that yet. We haven't completed that work. But I think there'll be an impact on both, because clearly there'll be an impact on retail customers because of potential loss of income and loss of jobs and damage to housing itself, but on businesses because of working capital stress. And businesses that were struggling at the time, we will see some pressure there. So I don't know, but I expect that it would be a good measure of both.
Well, thanks for coming in, Andrew. That's Andrew Thorburn, the CEO of BNZ, talking about recovering and getting businesses back up and running in Christchurch after last month's earthquake. And I'm Gareth Vaughan at interest.co.nz.